Hello, everybody. Welcome to Townsend 909, or welcome back if you're a wonderful viewer. Me and Bryer, right over there from Bryer's Music Showcase. If you aren't aware of it or haven't watched it yet, we just finished a discography review of the Byrds. Every week on Saturday, well, besides one day, I had vacation and I didn't want to do it on Saturday, but ignore that. But for the most part, every Saturday we've been reviewing a Byrds album for almost every Saturday. And now that it's now that we reviewed them, uh, this video is just going to be like sort of like Bryer sort of gives like I want you to give like a little bit of overview, like a little bit of history through each era, like just tiny bits that you remember, and then after that, like give your opinions, like this is what they did right, this is what they did wrong, like I feel like that they were great at this, but maybe when they went in this direction, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't that much, and I'll give mine, and we'll do our top 10, and then an album ranking, and basically our final thoughts after that. Be like, yep, like either be like, oh, I love the Birds, they're one of my new favorite bands, or I really like them, but they're not a band that I'm ever gonna really like. I'll listen to them, but wouldn't consider myself a diehard fan of them, or not diehard, but like not like a band that I would necessarily like consider to be the best, or be like, I could care less for them. Like they had like some good albums, but maybe they should have just quit while they were ahead at a certain part. Like, and I know Garrett feels that a certain way after like their fifth album. They sort of just quit after that, you know. But besides that, let's begin it. Um,
Okay, so so this was definitely a very interesting experience, just because of course I knew of the Birds and I knew their hits, but then see, I'm trying to remember the first time I heard them. The first time I heard them was kind of I want to say when I was still like a budding music fan at the time, and the Birds got brought up a lot because were pretty big. They were pretty big in the '60s, and I think I listened to parts of their greatest hits compilation. The famous greatest hits of that for them. And I don't think I even finished it. I only listened to like the first five songs, and then I just kind of like drifted off after that. It wasn't until I want to say either this year or sometime late last year is when I started to kind of get interested in them. I know Jason is a fan of the Byrds, and so that kind of drove me to kind of listen to them. So of course, I bought their debut album first, and I also bought their second album, Turn Turn Turn, roughly around the same time. And I really enjoyed these two, but I didn't really have a drive to venture further until, of course, you offered to do this whole series, and I was like, okay, sure, why not? It should be interesting. So I guess yeah, I'll just go into my overview at this point. So I'm not going to go too in depth on history because I've been
yeah,
doing
if
it.
you want to, sorry to interrupt, but if you want to see their history, watch our reviews.
Yeah.
Bryer has amazing history. Well, sometimes they don't really have a history on every album, like a big history, but Bryer has really good research on every album that we review. So if you want if you want to hear him go really in depth on each album, just check out the reviews.
Yeah, and I do want to shout out because there's this. I don't know if you know this YouTube channel called Pop Goes to '60s. He
I
actually,
do.
yeah, because he has. That's actually where I got a lot of my information. Was watching because he did a whole mini series about the Byrds. He went through the whole discography as well, and that's kind of where I learned learn a bit of what went on during that time, and of course I went online myself as well just to get a little bit more. But yeah, I recommend that Bird series if anyone's interested. Again, the YouTube channel is called Pop Goes to '60s. It's really good, and I know as of right now he's doing the Beach Boys at the moment, so that's going to be an interesting one, especially when we get to the '90s. But I digress. We're not talking about the Beach Boys. Um, but yeah, so anyway, going back into it. So again, first album came out in '65. Again, great starting point for them. I mean, this really boosted the folk rock scene to the into the mainstream. Again, you have the classic lineup. You have Roger McGuinn, Gene Clark, David Crosby, Michael Clark, and Chris Hillman. And yeah, I mean, just top to bottom, this is a very good album. I mean, I hear a lot of people when people do rank the Byrds album. I'm not going to say where I ranked mine, but people always rank it lower because some people think they would do much better things, and to an extent, I kind of agree with that. But you can't deny the impact this album had. So yeah, this was a good album, and I think they followed it up really strong with the second album, Turn Turn Turn. Of course, it had the big hits, the title track. I'll talk about that song when we get to our top 10 songs. But yeah, I mean that song was huge. This was released the same year. Of course, I would say even though I do enjoy this album, I say this one definitely has a little bit more kind of okay songs. And this was kind of the album that's kind of started their whole end on an album on a joke song, which of course, if anybody's been keeping up the series, I've been very hit or miss with a lot of them. But regardless, I still think it's a very strong album. There's a lot of good songs. Then of course, by this point, they decided time to get to 1966. Psychedelic rock was starting to kick in, and they decided to kind of fuse psychedelic rock with folk rock as well. And of course, that led to the Fifth Dimension. This was again a lot more experimentation, taking different influences. I know they were listening to a ton of jazz at the time. I know Roger was definitely listening to a lot of John Coltrane and wanted to bring that into the mix. And yeah, it's another one of them. Many people cite this as one of their best of the '60s. I mean, do I agree with that? I mean, I can definitely appreciate it, but I'd say there's definitely songs that are kind of hit or miss. Um, some songs worked really well. I'd say side one is definitely the better side. Side two is kind of spotty. And there's one song in particular that we do not want to talk about. So I'm just going to keep moving on. But yeah, that album did really well. Of course, it had the big hit 8 Miles High, which is another one of the classics. But of course, what's notable about this album is that, of course, Gene Clark left the band. He was kind of on this album a little bit, but other than that, after this album, he was kind of done. So yeah, he left, and then it was just the four of them. And then they kind of would continue on. We have the next album, Younger Than Yesterday. I mean, I'm not going to say where it is, but it is very good. There's a lot of songs on here that I really do enjoy. And yeah, we'll go more in depth when we get to the top 10. Same thing can be said about the fifth album. Of course, we have Notorious Byrd Brothers, and of course, by this point, there was more tension in the band, especially with David Crosby. Again, we all know David was being David. He had to talk. But yeah, he would eventually either quit or he left. I forget which one it is. But this was kind of the last album he was pretty much involved with for a while. There's some, of course, not that much. He contributed on a couple songs, but again, so we have that. And then at this point, they were kind of in a weird predicament because their popularity was really starting to go down, and there was only one thing to do. And what was the thing they decided to do? Decided to go country. Decided to go more country rock. So the lineup changed. You have Graham Parson filling in, and he's all over this album. Then you have the first ever appearance of Clarence White, I believe. Clarence White would go on to have a good role in the band for quite some time, but pretty solid country. If you like country, you might like this. Then from then, can't try to remember. Okay, now I remember. So next album we have Dr. Byrds and Mr. Hyde. Again, this is another kind of weird transitional period. They're kind of trying to keep that country audience, but trying to keep but trying to keep the country audience, but also regain their psychedelic folk rock audience, because obviously when this came out, this was very polarizing at the time. Of course, nowadays it's considered a country rock classic, but at the time it was very, very polarizing. But regardless, so they decided to try to go back to what they did. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. I think, um, but it was kind of an interesting experiment. But you know, I think I trying to remember. I think last time when we reviewed this, I think I talked a lot of good stuff about it. Um, Looking back on it, I would say my opinion on it has gone down a little bit, but still it's pretty solid. Okay, so we have that. Then we have their last album to come out in the '60s. We have Ballad of Easy Rider, which, of course, the title track is basically the theme song to the movie Easy Rider, because Roger wrote the theme song for it. And yeah, this was a pretty good album, I'd say, and dare I say, might be, in my opinion, probably one of the most underrated albums, because I really did enjoy a lot of the songs on here. Again, you still have that country twang to it, but I think they're done pretty well. I think this is a good balance between country, but still keeping that rock sensibility in the band. So there's that. The next one, their first album of the '70s, is one I don't have, and that's the Untitled album. It was supposed to have it. It was supposed to have a title, but somebody messed up. It was supposed to be like a placeholder when they sent it to the execs, and they misinterpreted it as that's the name of the album. So there you have it. But yeah, it was very yeah. There it is. So just like that.
Oh yeah.
What's
Also,
interesting?
we're sorry to interrupt. We also included the demos album Pre-Flight, which
Yeah,
was in '69.
right. That's also true. Yeah. So that came out the same year as Ballad of Easy Rider. Just a bunch of demos before they released the debut. We'll talk more about that on the ranking. But yeah, what's interesting about the Untitled album is that it's half live and half studio. So the first disc was all live, then the second one was studio. And generally, I've gone record saying that I'm kind of hit or miss on those types of albums, because I only want one or the other. Just pick one. Either have it all be live or have it all be studio. But I was pleasantly surprised with that album. I really enjoyed a lot. I really enjoyed the live side of it, especially the 8 Miles High. That whole like 20-minute version of 8 Miles High, or what? It was close to 20 minutes, I think, if I remember correctly. But I think that's a I think that's a very fun track. Lots of great jam sessions, great playing throughout. And by this point, they have gone really good as a live unit. I should also mention that the lineup changed again. So you have, of course, Roger McGuinn is the only member to appear on every album. Clarence White on guitar. I think Skip Batten was in the band by this point. And then you have Gene Parsons, no relation to Graham Parson. So I think you have just those four people by this point. And the live album and Untitled did really well. They were starting to get a little bit of popularity again, and so they decided to cash it in and release this album. We have Bird Maniacs, and I feel like me and Nick are going to agree on this album that it's definitely not one of their best. But they tried to cash in, but it just didn't work out. The production was kind of hit or miss. They Lots of very mediocre songs, and so many songs that really don't really fit the Byrds style. Just goes completely left field, too far. So yeah, yeah, and we'll probably talk a bit more later, but so they decided to try and remedy that by quickly doing a follow-up album to it to kind of fix what Bird Maniacs had done, because Bird Maniacs sold very poorly. So they decided to go with the next album, which is farther along. And this one they tried to produce themselves because they weren't happy with the production on the last album. So you have this one, and it's a little bit better. I'd say definitely there's more songs on here that I liked more on this album, but still, I think this is still kind of another weak entry for them. Um, again, a lot of this, mainly comes down to Skip Batten, because Skip Batten did not wrote some of the, I'd say, some of the worst songs in this period of the band. Yeah, just not that great stuff. But again, there's still a couple tracks. That's something else. That is something I'll say about all these albums, even the ones that are quote unquote bad. There's still like maybe a couple songs that I still really liked. Of course, nothing can top the classic period, but a lot of these later albums, I say there's still some decent stuff scattered throughout this whole half of them. So, but anyhow, that's farther along, and at some points, even McGuinn was kind of disillusioned by this lineup, and so by 1973, what better way to kind of fix that is to do a reunion album. So I don't have it, but by this point, all the classic members, Roger, David, Gene, Michael, and Chris, were all available. They decided, let's get back together. Let's do another reunion. Let's do a reunion album. Let's have one little hurrah. So they did it, and I'd say it's a very solid album. I think top to bottom, it was pretty good. There's no bad songs on it. I think by this point, everyone still sounds really good. The only complaint I hear from most people is that it's not really a collective effort. It was kind of just, one person brings in the song, everyone just backs them up, and that was it. It wasn't really a band type of thing like they did in their early days. But they made the best of it, and I heard there was supposed to be another one. They were going to do another one, but it never really came to fruition for whatever reason. But yeah, that reunion album ended up being their final album, and I think it was a pretty good one to go out on. Wasn't I mean, to me, it wasn't groundbreaking or anything, but it was at least a good way to close out. So overall, going through this whole discography, I'd say obviously there's some weak points, a lot of low points for this band. Again, nothing can really top the classic period to my ears, but I think even at their lowest, they still produced some really great stuff. I mean, again, they were known for their harmonies. They really popularized their harmonies, especially in the classic stuff. That I always really enjoy. Roger McGuinn, I feel like he doesn't get enough credit. Even though, yeah, he stuck with the band the whole time, and he was really the main arranger. And just how he arranges the songs, and his 12-string guitar, just how great tone he gets from it. And I just love his melodic playing. He's just really good at being in the pocket and just really just giving what the song needs, and that's something he does scout throughout. Of course, I'll just briefly go over each member, but Gene Clark, of course, great songwriter for his own right. It's kind of a shame he didn't really get a great like his solo career didn't really go anywhere initially, but it's kind of a shame because he really was a great songwriter. David Crosby, I mean, we all know what happened to David Crosby. He had a really great career, especially when you get to Crosby, Stills and Nash. Yeah, he just kept it going. Chris Hillman, I'd say Chris Hillman was a very was kind of like a secret weapon at some point. Like once you get to Younger Than Yesterday, like he really stepped up as a songwriter, and some of the songs might appear in my top 10 songs. So yeah, and a very great bass player too. He had some great bass lines. Michael Clark, solid drummer. I don't say he's underrated, but he's definitely good for what the band needed. Very solid drummer. So even the other members that are worth noting, I mean, Clarence White, who played guitar in a lot of the later period. Again, even on those weaker albums, he was kind of the MVP throughout those albums because his guitar playing was very, very top notch. And it's kind of a shame he passed away in 1973, if I'm not mistaken, of a drunk driver. So it's kind of a shame. But he was great. Gene Parson, I think I want to shout him out as well because I think he was another very good drummer, especially on the Untitled, especially when you hear the live portion of the Untitled. I think he was a very great drummer live. And I liked his voice too. I think he had a really good voice. I think same with Clarence White, but yeah, they were pretty good. Skip Batten, yeah, he was so far. He was my least favorite member of the entire Byrds family. No offense to him, but I mean he's a good bass player. But comes to songwriting, yeah, it'll probably be his songs probably would have been good for something else, but not for the Byrds song. But see if hopefully I'm not forgetting anybody. I mean Graham Parson. I think I'll mention Graham Parson. Graham Parson was pretty for a short time in the band. I think he was. I mean, they wanted to go country, and I think getting Graham Parson was kind of the best person to get, especially at that time, because by this point he was kind of a rising star. And of course, Graham Parson would go on to do great stuff with his band, the Flying Burrito Brothers, which apparently did really well. And that's where a lot of other notable musicians got their start, like Bernie Ledden, who would go on to join the Eagles. And I'm trying to remember, there was another very notable person that joined. Um, but regardless, like, yeah, Graham did really good for himself as well. Again, another one that died very young, I think. I think he died of a drug overdose. But yeah, very good. Let's see, anybody else I want to shout out to my knowledge? I think that's pretty much all the ones I'm going to shout out. I think there were some other members here and there, but not. But yeah, but overall, very enjoyable catalog. I'm very happy I got to go through this journey and just kind of get a better appreciation, because that's something I'll say about this catalog is that my respect for the Byrds have gone up tremendously. Um, would I consider myself like a diehard fan? Uh, maybe not all of the later stuff, but definitely for the classic period, I definitely definitely see the influence that period brought, and I definitely see myself going back to those albums quite a lot. And I definitely, of course, I bought a good chunk of the catalog already, so that goes to show that yeah, this was a very fun and enjoyable series. And yeah, so that's going to be my overview. Overall, 2 thumbs up.
Really great overview, actually. Really nice.
Thank you.
I'm not going to go as long as you did because you basically went through all the albums, but good way of putting it is they had a really good folk era. We could both
Mm-hmm.
agree on that. And their psychedelic era, I think for the most, like 95% of it worked. The 5% that didn't work, I'll go over when we rank the albums. Um, yes, their country era, I could see where people don't like it. I'm a big fan of Sweethearts of the Rodeo. I do like certain country parts of Dr. Byrds and Mr. Hyde. Same with Ballad of Easy Rider. But yes, their later albums, besides like Untitled, like last 4 albums, like it's like hit or miss. Like Untitled and the reunion album are great, but then like those 2 albums in between,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you have like 2 like brioche buns and then like substandard meat and
Right.
toppings.
Yeah.
But yeah, top 10 though. I don't know. I wanted to do 10, 10, 9, 9, 8, 8. So I'd like you to go first though on
All
your
right.
top.
So our top 10 songs, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we're going back and forth, right?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So number 10. I'm gonna go. Actually, let me just go ahead. I'm just gonna pull up each album as I go. But number 10 is gonna go from Notorious Bird Brothers. I'm gonna go with their cover of "Going Back." I mean, "Going Back" is a classic song, of course, written by Carole King. I've always thought it was a great song. And the Birds do a really great job on it. Again, the big thing about the Birds is that they were a pretty really good cover band. Like most pretty much a good majority of their covers are very good, and a couple of them maybe even better than the original. But I'll get to that one. I'll get to one of them later on. But yeah, just a great melody. Again, you have the guitar, just Roger just really giving this great melody to it. Again, arranged really well. And lyrically, of course, we all know what's about, just going back to like better days and stuff like that, just looking back at your youth. Just a Again, it's a beautiful song, and the Byrds do and another beautiful rendition of it. So that's number 10.
My number 10 is going to be from the Five Dimension album, and that's going to be the first lead vocal by David Crosby, that will be "What's Happening." Uh, Very amazing psychedelic song. Really quite like it. Very very underrated. And really shows where Crosby was heading with how he was going to be like on the next album, Younger Than Yesterday. So yeah, that'll be my number 10.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. All right. Number 9 for me. And I'm going to go to Younger Than Yesterday. And I'm going to go with the kickoff track, which is So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star. Yeah. And that's another thing about the Byrds. I think every album starts really good. Even the even the weaker albums, they always had a good opening track. This is definitely one of the best ones here. Just a great great kind of commercial sounding rock song. Of course, it was supposed to be a kind of a sort of dig at the Monkees, because by this point the Monkees were really starting to get popular, and so the Byrds were kind of doing some kind of commentary on that. But yeah, there's just so many things great about it. I love the bass playing. Again, this is where Chris Hillman really started to step out of his shell and really showcase what a great musician he is. And yeah, I just love it. Has almost a Spanish flair, because you have that instrument that you hear, that rhythmic instrument. I forgot what it's called, but I know it's something you just rub against and you just get this kind of cool sound on. But it's very nice. And yeah, it's just altogether a pretty great song for them. So that's number 9.
Nice number 9. My number 9. I agree with you on being on it being number on the top 10, and that's gonna be "Get to You." No, wrong song. I was thinking of "Get to You" from the Notorious Bird Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I misread it. I will. I'll give you a hint. Going back is on my top 10. "Get to You" though, number 9. That is the last song for side 1. Very country, has like a nice little country feel to it. Definitely a big hint towards what they were going to go towards their next release, "Sweethearts of the Rodeo," and I really like it. Very does a really perfect mix. Like it does, I think it's better than any of like it does a perfect mix between what they're doing then versus what they were gonna go towards, and I think it's better than how they like the way that they did it was better than how they did it on the Dr. Bird's album. But yeah, that's my number 9.
All right, cool. More on that later. But for my number 8, I'm gonna go to the Fifth Dimension album, and I'm gonna go with 8 Miles High. Of course, it was the big song on here, and I know it for a fact. And when we reviewed this album, I was quoted at being very critical of McGuinn's playing, because I thought it was because I didn't really like how it sounded, because again he was trying to emulate something John Coltrane would do on a saxophone, which I respected. But I will say, over time, it has grown on me more. I still prefer McGuinn when he's more melodic, but I now, after a couple months of just re-listening to it, I definitely am starting to come around to it, this type of playing a bit more. And of course, it's a very catchy song, like the 8 miles, like that whole melody, just very catchy. And yeah, it just has this great feel to it. Again, really sums up the 60s really well, especially during the psychedelic era. I actually showed this to one of my friends one day, because she doesn't really know anything about the Byrds, but one day she was like, "Hey, got any songs you want to play?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I thought, "Yeah, why not? Let's give it a go." And I played 8 Miles High, and she actually liked it. I was actually kind of surprised. But yeah, it's very very interesting. But overall, yeah, it's a song that's grown on me, and yeah, I definitely see why it's a very popular song.
Nice, really good. Number 8. My number 8 is going to be the track before it gets you off the Notorious Bird Brothers, and that's going to be "Wasn't Born to Follow," the Carole King song. Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like going back. That was another Carole King written song. Um, really good. Another very country, a very country esque song. Another song that will that sort of hints on what they're gonna eventually do on the next album, Sweethearts of the Rodeo. Um, and again, great mix between their psychedelic era and their country era. And yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say, but yeah, it's really, if you never heard it before, check it out.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a good pick.
Number 8.
Num- Number eight.
What do
All
you want
right.
to follow?
Okay, so just went number 8. Now I'm on number 7. Okay, number 7. I'm gonna go with the title track for this album. Of course, it's gonna be Mr. Tambourine Man. Of course, this is their Bob Dylan cover and the first Bob Dylan cover and their breakout single. And yeah, they do a great job. I mean, I don't. I can't. I think I'm gonna. I think I do prefer this over the original, even though I do prefer. Even though I do like Bob's version quite a bit. But yeah, it's just a great. I mean, it starts out the album, and again, it pretty much has all the characteristics of what the classic Byrds sound was. Again, you start out with Roger McGuinn on the 12-string guitar, just setting the tone, and then of course you have the great harmonies by by the whole band, and it's just absolutely spectacular. And yeah, it's just a terrific way to start a career with, and yeah, just it's a great song. So yeah, that's number
Number
7.
7.
Number 7, Tambourine Man.
Solid pick. Very good. My number 7 spot is going to be the lead off track off the Sweethearts of the Rodeo album, and that's going to be "You Ain't Going Nowhere," the Bob Dylan song. And yeah, what a fantastic song to open up the album with. Yeah, big fan of it. They do a fantastic job on it, and it definitely sets the mood on what will on an amazing album that album is. I will say to people who ever listen to this album, if you don't like this song, then stay far away from the album because the other 10 songs aren't going to fare any better. But yeah, that's my number 7 spot.
All right, yeah, that's a good song off that album. All right, so on to my number 6. So I'm gonna go back to. Oh, don't. Everything's falling apart. Okay, next. Number 6. Going back to the Younger Than Yesterday, I'm going to go with the Chris Hillman song, and that is Have You Seen Her Face? Yeah, this was. Chris Hillman, like I said, was kind of the unsung hero of this band during this period. Because, of course, Gene Clark was no longer in the band, and I think Chris really stepped up. And this is definitely one of his best. I'll talk about another one soon, but yeah, great melody throughout, just such good. Again, the melody was kind of the big thing for me, and yeah, don't have a whole lot to add to it, but yeah, the playing on here by everyone is great. And yeah, number 6.
My number 6 spot, first song I picked from the from the Younger Than Yesterday album, that's going to be Thoughts and Words, opening song for the second side of the album. Man, what a fantastic song that is. Very psychedelic. You know, I make it no secret on whatever channel I'm on talking about psychedelic music. I'm a big fan of it for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I really like psychedelic music and really love it. Definitely check it out if you have not. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. I just think it's a great harmonies, amazing psychedelia. Check it out if you have not. Number 6, Thoughts and Words.
Yeah, cool. That one was probably one of my honorable mentions. Number 5, and gonna go back to this album, and it's a song Nick already mentioned, and that is "Get to You." Yeah, I mean, Nick already pretty much summed it up. It's just I just think it's a very beautiful song. Again, you do hear a little bit of a country influence in here, but again, I love the verses. Like the verses of that song is just so good. I just love how everything flows together, and the chorus is just very nice as well. Just kind of is very I don't know, like almost like you're floating almost type of thing. I can't remember what I said in the review, but yeah, that was definitely one of the big highlights of this particular album. Um, yeah, so really good. Number 5.
Nice. Glad that makes you. I'm glad you managed to put it in your top five.
Yeah.
My number five is from the exact same album that we were
Okay.
just talking about. The Joyce Brothers, "Artificial Energy," the opening track. Man, what a definitely their best opener in my opinion. Just right away, you just with the horns and the way that they're singing. For some reason, I actually like the messed up vocals. It suits the song and the lyrics and always definitely always been a big fan of this song because it sets the mood for what the album's gonna be like almost like yeah always been a big fan of this song. Number five, "Artificial Energy."
Yeah, that was another honorable mention from me.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
before we get to number one, I want us to give our honorable mentions because
yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
I have a
Yeah.
lot of great songs that I really wanted to put on this.
Yeah. Luckily, I only restricted mine just 10. So
Okay,
so yeah. So yeah. We're on number 4 now. Number 4. Going to go back to the debut. I'm going to go with the other big hit on here, which is "I'll Feel a Whole Lot Better." This was a Gene Clark song, and yeah, this is another one of Gene Clark's best on it, honestly. Just a great upbeat, very catchy song. Again, the drumming on here was very good on here. And again, Gene sounds great on lead vocals for this one, and it's just it's great lyrically, and yes, it's one of their classics for a reason. So that's number 4.
nice number four. Um, my number four could go to a song called uh, CTA 102.
Okay.
Bryer rolling his eyes right now. Not like actually, but he's like, really? That's it in your top 10, let
Hey,
alone
it's your list. It's your list. I'm gonna be
you think it's
quiet.
better than Artificial Energy and you think it's better than so many up there, their songs? I say yes to that. I love the alien talking bit at the end. I love the harmonies. I love the experimentation going on in the song. It's just very mind blowing how good this track is. I'm a big fan of space, so any song that really brings up space, I usually am a big fan of it. But yeah, number four, CTA 102.
All right.
Don't ever, I will never feel bad for putting that over a lot of.
That's good. Yeah. No shame. All right. Number 3. We're in the top 3 now. So this is the only song in my top 10 that's from the later period. And I'm actually going to go to this album. And I'm going with the title track, Ballad of Easy Rider. And yeah, like I think this is one of my favorite of their opening tracks. I just love the song. Just the orchestration on here. There is 2 versions of the song. There is the movie version and then there's the album version. The album version is pretty different. The movie version for Easy Rider is a bit more. It's definitely more has a more, I guess, folky, a little bit of psychedelic twang to it, but this one's definitely there's a lot more lush production on here, which I love. The strings on here are gorgeous, and one of my favorite Roger McGuinn vocal. I think it really suits his voice very well. And what's good about this particular, because of course these later albums I got from this, like, I know Nick has this as well, this like 5 original album classics volume 2 thing, which comes with a lot of the later stuff.
I do.
Yeah, so what's good about the CD is actually it comes with some bonus tracks, and actually does come with a longer version of the title track. And that's actually the one I prefer, because the long version actually includes a extra guitar solo from McGuinn on his 12 string, which is, I think that's what the song needed. It needed that little guitar solo. So yeah, so a very underrated song. I love this song. So it's number 3.
Don't blame me for putting that number three. Sadly, it's an honorable mention for me, but if I was making a top 20, if I was making a top 50 Birds list, that would it'd be an easy pick on that list. I'm not going to say it's going to be low on the list. It's going to be pretty high. It's going to be sort of in the middle towards the high on the list. But yeah, really good song. Very underrated. Yeah, I'm glad you have. I'm glad you think it's worth being on the top 10 list. I just happen to prefer these other three, and
Right, of course. Yeah.
Number 3, the one that I was referring to before, but got the mistake, and that's going to be Going Back from the Notorious Bird Brothers album. Oh man, what a fantastic song! The harmonies, very simplistic, but I really like it. I don't have a whole lot to say about this song, but it's just very simplistic, and the harmonies are just so good.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth being on the list.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, and I'm back to this album. So back to Younger Than Yesterday, and I'm gonna go with another cover that they did, another Bob Dylan cover, and that of course is My Back Pages. To me, this is by far their best Dylan cover, in my opinion. I just absolutely think it's beautiful. I think it really suits the lyrics really well, and Roger does a great vocal performance on here. Again, I still like Bob's version, but I like the instrumentation that the Byrds did. Really give it a bit more of a punch to it, and yeah, it's number 2. So yeah, great song.
Cool. Before I get to my number 2, I'm gonna go over the 3 comments Jason said. Hey guys, more Byrds.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
sir.
Yep.
This is the last Byrds video you're going to be seeing from us for a very, very long time if we ever do a Byrds video.
Yeah.
If I ever do a Byrds video with Garrett, with Bryer, it'll be that album he mentioned, the one that everyone should know and love. I agree. It's a great album, and the Gene Clark album, and I want to read that at some point. What are you doing? Top 10 songs? Yes.
We're almost done.
Yeah, very close. And after we do our number 2, my number 2, Brier's gonna do his honorable mentions. I'm gonna do my honorable mentions, and then our number 1, and then the ranking. Is top 3. I Feel Hot Better, Turn, and Mr. Tambourine Man.
Yeah, that's great. Great top 3.
Nice. My number 2 is going to be a song off the Younger Than Yesterday album. That's going to go. That awesome song's to go to. Have You Ever Seen Her Face?
Yeah.
Love that track.
Yeah.
You basically mentioned all the stuff that I was going to say. Plus, again, amazing harmonies. That was probably the best part of the song is both the harmonies and the guitar playing. Really good, and definitely Chris Hillman at his peak on this song, and on these 2 albums, this and the next album, Notorious Bird Brothers, him at his peak. Honorable mentions by Bryer.
All right, so my honorable mentions is in no order. We have Thoughts and Words, which I know Nick mentioned. He also mentioned Artificial Energy. That was also in there. A song from Fifth Dimension, I See You. Then another one is actually one song from my honorable mention. I have one song from this album actually, and that was Bugler, which is a Clarence White cover. Where I think it's a really good song, and especially when you know the context, because it's about a kid losing his dog to a driver, and if you know the history of Clarence White, you know he would also tragically die that way. So I think that's a kind of a nice song for him. Moving on, Bells of Rimney from the debut. Great song, love it. A song from the second album, Turn, It Won't Be Long. Another song from Ballad of Easy Rider, their version of Jesus Is Just All Right. Then I have Satisfied Mind. I think that's a very underrated song. And then I have Here Without You. And then one more song I'll mention, and that is from the Untitled album, Chestnut Mare.
Nice. Yeah, I have quite a bit of honorable mentions myself. Hickory Wind from the
that's a good one.
album. Old Blue from the Dr. Byrds album. Same with Nashville West. I really wanted to have that in my top 10. That would definitely be 11 if we're doing top 25 songs. But if we did that, we'd be here forever. But yeah, Nashville West, great instrumental. Sweet Mary from Byrds, Feel a Whole Lot Better. The Bells of Rimney. Obviously, Turn, Turn, Turn has to be somewhere in the mix, but just happens not be in my top 10. I Am a Pilgrim, The Christian Life, both songs from Sweethearts. Four songs from Younger Than Yesterday that I just felt like it wasn't as good to be on the list was So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, Renaissance Fair, My Back Pages, and Why. But those four songs are absolutely fantastic. It just happens to not be top 10 worthy. Pretty Boy Floyd and Life in Prison from the Sweethearts album. Mr. Tambourine Man from the Pre-Flight album, so with the airport song, and Boston. 8 Miles High from the Untitled album. I still think it's better than the studio version. Truck Stop Girl from the studio half of the album. Ballad of Easy Rider and Fido, and I agree, Jesus Was Alright is also great. And Full Circle, Changing Heart, Cowgirl in the Sand, and Borrowing Time from the Reunion album. And okay, you guys could teach a class on the Byrds.
I mean, our series basically is a class. Like each episode is like an individual lesson.
Yes, yes, and Bird Maniacs is the lesson of an album never sold.
Yeah, that's the class everyone falls asleep at.
Yes. Okay, Bryer, what's your number one?
All right, number one. This isn't. I think I've gone on record saying that this was my favorite Byrds song, and I was kind of wondering if that would change, and thankfully it didn't change at all. I think this one will always be my number one favorite Byrds song, and that is, of course, from the second album, and of course, I'm talking about the title track, Turn, Turn, Turn,
Yeah.
parentheses, To Everything There Is a Season. I mean, to me, this pretty much sums up what makes the Byrds great during this period. It has everything you love to hear. Again, it starts out with that great 12-string riff, and then it kicks in. It has this great rhythm to it, and the harmonies throughout is just absolutely spectacular. And I think I said this in the review, but of course, this reportedly took so many takes to get right because they wanted to do it legitly. They didn't want session musicians to play on it. They wanted to do it themselves. And so it took them a lot longer to do it, but by the time they got to it, it was perfection. I think it's absolutely spectacular. Again, there's not much else to add to it. I just pretty much summed it up, but it's still, and I think it will always be my favorite Byrds song. So there you have it.
Really good number one. Can't complain. My number one is a song that I feel like gets way too much hate.
Yeah, I think I know what's going to be.
Hate in the Byrds community. I truly think so. I know Bryer doesn't hate it. I know, but there are a lot of people who are like, "What the heck is going on with this guy when he made it?" I personally think it's a masterpiece. I mean, you're talking to the same person who thinks Within You Without You is the best Beatles song. So take that with a pinch of salt when I say the best Byrds song is The Mind Gardens. Awesome songwriting by David Crosby. His voice, I love the backwards guitar. I know Garrett said it's a little bit too much on this album. I mean, not on this album, on this song. Totally get the criticism there, but I think this is just the perfect Byrds song, and it comes right after Thoughts and Words, and it's before their amazing cover of My Back Pages. But yeah, that's my number one. That just like CTA 102, I am not ashamed to put that in my top 10. So yeah. But
very cool.
Started off well, just like with the top 10. We'll start with you with the ranking, your number 13 spot.
All right, cool. So I think you and I are going to agree on the bottom one. So I mean, there's no hiding it, but It's gonna be this album. It's gonna be Burn Maniacs. Yeah, I mean, it's by far their weakest album. By far, I think this has probably some of their worst songs. Again, it comes down to Skip Batten, who I don't know why they decided to take these songs in here, but I feel like they didn't have that much material, and Skip just happened to have songs, and so like, okay, fine, we'll use your songs, and it's very yeah, like actually, which one was the worst one? I think Citizen Kane, what I think was the worst song. I said was the worst one, and I think it might be the worst Bird song in general. Um, but yeah, even like again, even though this has a lot of bad songs on here, there's still a couple songs I do like. I think probably the best song on here is Pale Blue. I think that's a really good song. Um, Kathleen's song was also pretty nice, and I liked Jamaica Says You Will, which was a Jackson Brown cover. Of course, by this point, Jackson Brown was unknown. But other than that, it's pretty weak. Not very lot of songs that aren't that memorable, and yeah, that's it's number 13.
One word, well, besides the just kidding, that's how I feel with the album. Shame. There's just
Right.
shame. It's a shame because they had an amazing album going into, Untitled, and they had a lot of good things going for them. But then they're like, let's ruin it all and make a really bad album afterwards. And
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. Bird Maniacs, horrible album. Very few tracks I like off of it. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. That's how bad it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 13, Bird Maniacs.
Yeah. Okay. We may or may not agree on our number 12. I'm gonna go with Farther Along. Just slightly better than the previous album, but still, there's still a couple weak songs on here. Again, Skip Batten, just like, what are you thinking? What was he thinking? But again, there's still some decent songs. Like I mentioned, Bugler as an honorable mention in my honorable mention songs. I like that one. What else? Tiffany Queen was pretty good. I did like that one. Um, Small text. So I think Precious Kate I also really liked. But again, the production definitely not one of their best because again they tried to produce themselves, so it's a little bit rough around the edges. And yeah, didn't really do all that well as well. I think this actually charted worse than Burn Maniac, surprisingly, if I remember correctly. So yeah, this was kind of the big downfall for the band here. But still, it's okay. So it's not the worst thing I've heard. So it's number 12 still.
I'm going to go with Farther Along as well. I agree. Very mediocre album. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, but yeah, very, very disappointed when I first heard it. And well, I didn't think it was that bad when I first heard it, but giving it a re-listen for the review, it was worse than I remember. But yeah, I like if you want to know what songs I like, just look at the review I did and look at my top five because I don't really have all the songs down by heart with this album. So yeah, number 12, Farther Along.
Mm-hmm.
Bryer probably still owns Bird Maniacs, even though he doesn't like it.
I mean, right? Because again, it's in the box. So if I get rid of this, there's gonna be one empty space, and that's gonna annoy me. So yeah, I gotta keep it.
Sadly.
Yeah.
What's your number 11, Bryer? What barely edged off your top 10 Byrds albums?
Okay, we're barely edged out. So at this point onward, it's like Farther Along and Burn Maniacs are definitely the worst. From this point on, these albums they range from I like to absolutely amazing. So from this point on, all good albums here. That being said, just missing the top 10, and I know Nick, I know I know you love this album a lot more than I did, but I'm gonna go with Sweetheart of the Rodeo.
Oh
Um,
wow, it actually went because when we did our top six, you actually had it above 5D last time. So
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I
So
respect the opinion, of course.
of
I'm not
course,
gonna be like I'm kicking you out. I'm done with you.
right, right,
Our opinions
yeah.
aren't the same.
Exactly. But yeah, I do really like this album. again, it's not my preferred version of the Birds. It might be a little bit too country for me. But I think the songs that I did end up liking, I think are really strong. Like you mentioned, you ain't going nowhere. It's a great opening track on here. I really liked I Am a Pilgrim. I think that was pretty nice. The Christian Life was pretty good. It was another standout. Probably, I think my favorite song on the album was Hickory Wind, and you mentioned that. I think you mentioned that as well. I think that's a really terrific song on here. Um, but yeah, like I said, it's good, but again, still not my preferred version of the Birds. But yeah, it's still a very solid album if you're into country rock. This is definitely a must listen. And also very influential for the genre. So yeah, number 11.
Sweetheart, the rodeo doesn't get the stamp approval of Garrett Meat or Bryer. That's fair.
I just happen to be the one that likes it the most by a hair.
Yeah, like, well, you don't dislike it. It just happens to
Yeah,
not be the best thing you've ever heard.
yeah.
I know Gary. He just flat out really doesn't like the album. Like it does. He dislikes it so much he doesn't even want to continue with their discography.
Mm,
I'd say with you, you're like it's good, but I think the Byrds had better albums than this.
yeah.
The way Garrett makes it seem is like this is the worst thing that the Byrds will ever come out with, and I don't think it's gonna get any better from there. But yeah, I don't
I
know.
mean,
I don't
I
know.
mean, granted, that's what the general public would probably do.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know fully how Jason feels about Sweethearts, but I know telling by the comment he's not a fan of it either. My number 11 is sorry. Well, sorry but not sorry, Jason, with putting this at number 11. It's Turn Turn Turn. This album,
Okay.
like, well, Jason doesn't get why I would put Sweethearts higher on the list. I don't get how he thinks Turn 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 is higher on his list. It's just this album is just them sort of just to me. It sounds like them capitalizing on the first album. It's like, hey, well, it just sounds like a bunch of filler songs. Like it has like the big hit, but like the rest of the songs for the most part sound like songs that they had left over from Mr. Tambourine Man. But yeah, but worse. But yeah, that's my number 11. Sorry, but not sorry. Turn, turn, turn.
Mm,
Soundtrack
understandable.
is amazing though.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Now we're on to the top 10. And so number 10 for me, I'm gonna go with Dr. Birds and Mr. Hyde. Um, I think I mentioned it earlier, but I think I liked it more when we did the review. But I think gradually it kind of went down a bit. Um, Again, like I said in the original initial review, Clarence White is definitely the big MVP on the album. I mean, his guitar playing is all over this. Kind of overshadows Roger McGuinn almost. But yeah, but I think there's still some great songs on here. This Wheels on Fire is a great rocker. Old Blue, I think I liked a lot. Let's see what else. Drugstore truck Drugstore truck driving man. Say that 5 times fast.
I know, right?
Yeah. King Empathy the Third. The big offender on this album though is the closing track, which is the medley, which is kind of shows just how much material they really had because one, it starts out with My Back Pages. I mean, come on, you already had Perfection before. Why you want to bring it up again? So and the whole medley is pretty forgettable. Like other than My Back Pages, the whole rest of the medley is pretty forgettable. But yeah, and there's a couple songs that I don't remember honestly. But yeah, it's number 10, still solid album, but again, I think they have a little bit. I think they have better.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. That just thinking about it, I just sort of daydream thinking about that one track and very, very bad. Yeah, I like Gene Clark. I like him too. I just don't love him as much as some of the other members, like Chris Hillman, Crosby, or even McGuinn. He's a good member, but I wouldn't. He's. I've never. He was good with the first two albums, especially the first album.
Mm-hmm.
That I'll always give him credit for making the first album as great as it was. But after the first album, I mean, you saw how low I put it on the list. So yeah, my number 10 spot though. this is where I think the Byrds albums go range from really good to like absolutely amazing, and that's going to be their Fifth Dimension album from 1966. First album without Gene Clark, really. Uh, this is, I will say, this album is very front loaded. The title track is really, really nice. Very, very nice, if you ask me. Definitely continues the the consensus that they have really good opening tracks. Wild Mountain Time is really good. Mr. Spaceman, I know Gary. I know Bryer isn't the biggest fan of Mr. Spaceman, but I think it's really good. ICU is really solid too. What's happening? I mean, it's in my top 10. So I come at and stand at every door. Which now that I'm thinking about it, I'm really I forgot about it, and I'm really ashamed that I didn't have that as an honorable mention. But just throw it in there now. If you made a playlist of songs, just add that in there. Hey, 8 Miles High. I mean, like, come on, that song. But then after that, that's when the album takes a serious nosedive in quality. Hey Joe, where you going? Very mediocre. Captain Soul, very mediocre instrumental. John Riley, very mediocre song, and then it ends on arguably one of their worst songs, 242 Foxtrot. Unlike Genesis, where they make an amazing Foxtrot album,
which I have behind me.
I saw that. That's why I made that reference. And
Yeah.
unlike them making an amazing album called Foxtrot, the Byrds make a horrible song called Foxtrot. Very, very disappointed.
Yeah.
They also, I know a lot of Bird fans consider this to be their best album. I think it's one of their weaker albums. It's good, but yeah, very, very, very disappointed because I know a lot of people really like this album.
Yeah. All right. Okay, number 9 for me, and it's one I don't own, and I'm gonna go with Pre-Flight, the demo compilation, which we did include. Yeah, I mean, it's a demo album, so this was a pretty like these types of albums are always hard to rank because I'm always like, okay, how do I grade this compared to the rest of the catalog? Because, like I said, it's just a bunch of demos that they did before they released their debut. But yeah, it's still, I think it's pretty good. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. Again, it's a good history piece, like historical piece. Like if you're interested to hear what the Byrds were at that point in their early career, then definitely give it a listen to kind of get a feel for what they sounded like. And there are some good songs that that didn't make the debut that I think actually I can kind of see them putting them on the debut if they were given the chance. I can't remember on the top of my head, but there were definitely some good songs. And I think I really like the first 2 songs quite a bit. And then, of course, the album includes songs that would appear on the debut. Of course, you have Mr. Tambourine Man. I think Here Without You was part of it, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, there was a few songs that did make the debut, and again, very interesting to hear them. I do think that they would sound better on the debut, honestly, especially Mr. Tambourine Man, which is kind of an odd marching band feel on this compilation, but still interesting. So again, like I said, if you're a Byrds historian, then and you haven't heard Pre-Flight, then yeah, go check it out.
Shout out to Zieb for introducing us to that album because
Right.
I've never heard that album before. I didn't even know it existed until he mentioned it, and yeah, I thought it was good enough to include on the ranking. My number 9 is going to go to Dr. Byrds and Mr. Hyde. I mean, this album is very similar to how I feel about 5D. Very front loaded. I feel like the first side I think is perfect. This Wheels on Fire, very strong opener. Old Blue, very nice. Your Gentle Way of Loving Me is amazing. Child of the Universe, I love. Nashville West, beautiful instrumental. Drugstore Truck Driving Man is great way to start off the second side, and just like just like the 5D album, after that opener of side two, that's when things plummet in quality. Not nearly as bad as the quality dip in 5D, but still a noticeable difference in quality after that song. King Apathy 3 is very mediocre. Candy is all right. Bad Night at the Whiskey is actually pretty good, and it ends on arguably one of the worst songs. That awful medley that I won't mention any more about it, but yeah, I will say it's definitely it's. I don't know if I think this is worse or the Learjet song, but I'm gonna say this song probably because it's longer, and at least Learjet song is a tiny bit catchy. But yeah, that's why this album's at number 9, and that's why I just think it's a tiny bit better than 5D because the quality does dip, but not nearly as drastically as it does on the 5D album, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, number 9, Dr.
All
Bird and
all
Miss.
right. Yeah. All right. So on to number 8. So, um, number 8, I'm gonna go with, and I don't own this as well. I'm gonna go with the reunion album, or the Byrds, the self-titled, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I don't know why. I still, even though I really enjoyed it, I think it's a very good album overall. I don't know. There's just something about it that prevented me from me going it bringing it higher. Again, the band still sounds really good. I think there's still some great songs. I do enjoy some of the covers that were included. Like I did enjoy a lot of the Neil Young song, and they included a Joni Mitchell cover, which I was kind of very happy. Of course, as a Joni fan, of course, I was pretty kind of happy to see that, and I think they do a really good job with the song that they chose. Um, um, but yeah, it's just a very solid album, and like I said in my overview, it was a solid album for them to go out on. Um, but yeah, it's pretty good. But I just like the next 7 a bit more. So yeah, it's number 8.
Really solid number 8 spot. My number 8 spot's gonna go to the Untitled album. Uh, yeah, I really like this Untitled album. The live part is actually pretty good. It has my favorite version of 8 Miles High. Uh, so if I ever want to listen to an album that has 8 Miles High on it, right away I'm going for Untitled.
Mm-hmm.
But it has a really good live side. But then the studio half is really, really good. Very nice, easy back album. And yeah, the only reason why I don't think this is higher on my list is because it is a little long. I will say that. That's my big problem with double albums for the most part is its length. And very few exceptions where the length doesn't bother me. But yeah, I really do feel it at the end. But yeah, I usually like to listen to these separately though. Like if I'm in the mood for the live part, I'm just going to listen to the live part. If I'm interested in the studio half, I'm just going to listen to the studio half first. But yeah. Number 8, Untitled.
All right, cool. Okay, number 7. And Nick already mentioned this, but number 7 is gonna be Fifth Dimension. Again, like the reasons you said, I do agree that I think side 1 is by far the best side. You know, the title track, Fifth Dimension, really good opening track. I really enjoyed Wild Mountain Time. That's a really good song. And yeah, I'm kind of hit or miss on Mr. Spaceman, but it's not the worst song by them. Of course, as I See You, which I first heard from the band Yes, who do a version on their debut, which was kind of interesting. What's Happening? Do you like? I Come and Stand Every Door. Of course, as 8 Miles High, which I talked about earlier. And yeah, side 2 is kind of spotty. Hey Joe is all right. Again, then you have Captain Soul, which is again, it's a very by the numbers instrumental. John Riley, I kind of enjoyed, and yeah, you mentioned before, like the Learjet song is not that good in my opinion. But yes, but even though I do agree the first half is better, I feel like the songs that I did enjoy, I really enjoyed, and so it's kind of why it's a bit higher on my list here. But again, the next 6 are stuff I probably will go back to a bit more often. With this album, I feel like I'll probably go back to like certain songs, but when it comes to just hearing the whole album all the way through, not so much. So yeah, that's number 7.
Okay. My number 7 is going to go to the demo album that we were just talking about before, Pre-Flight. Really solid demos. Some of the songs that didn't end up on the album, like the airport song in Boston, I'm really upset that they didn't go on the album. Uh, I'm in the minority where I say I actually prefer the demo version of Mr. Tambourine Man more, the one that would end up on the single/album. But yeah, I'm a big fan of these demos. I'm not a whole lot to say, but yeah, really, really solid demo album. Number 7, Pre-Flight.
All right. Okay, number 6. And I don't own it, but I'm going to go with the Untitled album. And pretty much for some of the reasons you said, yeah, the live half of it, very good. The playing on here was pretty off the chain. Definitely weren't expecting them to sound this rocking live. Of course, you already mentioned 8 Miles, their version of 8 Miles High. That's just a great trip to go on. How they extended it, and the other songs they chose on there was pretty good as well. There was a Dylan cover, which was nice, and yeah, the studio stuff was pretty good. I really enjoyed it a lot, and some of the songs were written. I know McGuinn was kind of wanted to do this play, but it didn't really come to fruition. And so he brought some of those songs on the album. And I would say those songs were the best songs on the album. I think those songs were very strong, and some of Roger's best. I think some definitely was some of his most underappreciated songs that he's written. But yeah, pretty good album. I really enjoyed it. It's number 6.
Yeah. There's an Untitled album? Yes, there is. Very, very. If you want to know the backstory, watch back on the video. Very interesting backstory, to say the least.
Yes.
My number 6 spot, just barely cracking out the top 5, and that's going to be The Ballad of Easy Rider. Yes, Ballad of Easy Rider. Very, very nice album. Unlike the previous album, it's not front loaded or back loaded. It's just a very nice listen throughout. I will say the strong tracks aren't nearly as strong as the ones on the albums before it or the ones that are higher on my list. But yeah, love the title track. Fido, great drum solo in there. Wasn't ever expecting to have a drum solo in a Byrds song.
Mm-hmm.
Gun Good Din, Deportee, Jesus Is Just All Right. Great songs. One song that really takes it down a notch and why it's in my top 6, why it's 6 and 9 my top 5 is Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. That devalues the album tremendously. Yeah. Number 6, Ballad of Easy Rider. Isn't giving the album title one of the most important things about making an album?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah. Again, I don't know. Should I just say the history now while we're here? Or should?
Yeah, but before you go do that, there's another album by the Rolling Stones called Between the Buttons. Fun story about that album is that it's an expression of not being sure. Like, say for like Bryer like, hey Nick, when do you think our next album reviews could be up? Like, oh, it's Between the Buttons. I'm not sure. The person who was asking about the album name, making the album, and he asked Charlie Watts. It was like, what's the name of this new Rolling Stones album that you guys chose the name? And he was like, oh, it's Between the Buttons. And he chose it, and he heard it as him saying, yeah, the name of the album is Between the Buttons, but really he meant was it's Between Buttons. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar story with the Byrds, this Untitled Byrds album, is that they couldn't decide on a name yet, so because of course when you were submitting your album to, I guess, the execs or whatever, you have to fill out this paperwork, and they again they I guess I forgot who, I can't remember if it was one of the representatives, but for the name of the album, the person didn't know the name, of course, so he just put Untitled to kind of hopefully people will get the idea, like it's Untitled. We're gonna decide one later, but of course that's not how it happens. So yeah, again, it's just by pure accident.
I guess unless it have been four is Untitled, but the fans gave it a title anyways. Yeah,
That's a good point. I don't think, yeah, no one's given given that Byrds album a title though.
yeah, probably because the Birds don't have as much of a fan base as Zeppelin does.
That's true.
Okay, number 5 for Bryer.
Okay, number
Curious.
5, and it's gonna be. I'm on the same sort of on the same page. I'm following that up. I'm also gonna go with Ballad of Easy Rider for my number 5. So just one tier higher. But yeah, I think I said it before, I said it earlier, but I think this is probably one of their most underrated album. I think pretty good overall. Yeah, I mean, starts out with the title track, which again, I already talked about how much I love the title track, so very good. You know, there's some songs that are not as strong, like Fido was okay, but it comes back with Oil in My Lamp, which is really good. Then you have County Blue, which was very nice. Then you have Jesus is Just All Right. It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, Gunga Din, which was a Gene Parsons song, which again, very good. I really enjoyed Deportee. I hope they said that right. I think that was a solid song. And yeah, I do agree. The last song, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins, yeah, not a good way to close out the album. But the songs I really enjoyed on here were enough for me to give it a top 5 ranking. So yeah, that's number 5.
Okay, that's fair. My well, before that, so you don't give your kid a name, you can just tell people they are untitled. Who knows?
Oh man, now
Maybe
I'm
if that
tempted.
person's popular enough in school, they might get a name.
Yeah, now I'm tempted.
Yeah, it was like, what are you gonna name your kid? Untitled. uh, don't mind the food making in the background. Uh,
Hmm.
my number 5 is gonna be Mr. Tambourine Man. Very sorry to say that, Jason. I know that's your favorite Birds album, and most of me most of me agrees on lots of parts about it. Um, I mean, the title track is mind blowing good. It's this whole album is really just the American answer to the British invasion. Feel Better is great. Spanish Harlem Incident is really great cover. You Won't Have to Cry is good. I do prefer the version that's on pre-flight, but Here Without You is good. The Bells of Rimini is amazing. All I
Hmm.
Really Want to Do is good. I Knew I'd Want You is really good. It's No Use. Definitely would have rather had Boston or Airport Song in the mix.
Oh yeah, yeah. Airport song was great.
Don't Doubt Yourself, Babe, really good. Charms of Freedom, really good, and We'll Meet Again. That would have all that's another one where either Boston or the Airport Song could have took its place. But really good consistency, but just not a perfect album. But yeah, that's my number 5 spot, Mr. Tambourine Man.
All right, sweet. Okay, number 4. Yeah, number 4. Okay, next I'm gonna go with Turn Turn Turn. I mean, yeah, I think this is a very solid follow up to the debut. I mean, it's definitely not as strong as the first album, but I think there's just enough good songs on here that made it boosted it up for me. Of course, I already gushed about the title track, so I'm not going to talk about more. But I really enjoy it won't be wrong. Is it won't be wrong or won't be long?
It won't be wrong.
Okay, I was right. I guess I wrote it wrong in my list, but yeah, I wrote it wrong when I did my honorable mentions. But yeah, I love that song. Set You Free this time's really good. Lay Down Your Weary Tune. I like the harmonies in that one. He's a Friend of Mine, which is a song about JFK. Was pretty good. Satisfied Mind I think is pretty good. Again, I mentioned in my honorable mentions. Um, but I do agree there are some weak songs on here. Like I'm not a huge fan of their version of Times They Are Changing. That's where I felt the added instrumentation didn't really add anything to the song. I think it kind of detracted from it. And then it closes out with Oh Suzanne, which again, kind of one of their joke songs, which I'm like, it's like whatever. But like I said, it's not their not their strongest album, but I feel like the highs on here are very good. So it's number 4.
Good number 4 spot. It's not just my favorite Bird album, but my 20th favorite album of all time.
That
Yeah,
is true.
I could see that. Yeah, I watched the video when
Yeah, it was a great video.
it was a great video. It just happens to not be in any higher. Yeah, my number 4 spot is going to go to their reunion album, Birds. Um, Man, this album impressed me when hearing it again. First time I heard it, I thought it was really good, but this second listen, when I you say, man, this album's so good. And yep, a lot of great tracks on it. All the honorable mentions I mentioned, and yeah, all the honorable mentions that I mentioned on this album are the reasons why. Yeah, number 4, Birds.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally. Yeah, it's a good album. Yeah, again, there was just something that I couldn't really put it higher for some reason.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
how I felt with Mr. Tambourine Man and Ballad of Easy Rider.
You're right. That's true. All right. Speaking of Mr. Tambourine Man, number 3 for me is Mr. Tambourine Man. So again, it's not number 1 for me, sadly, but it's in my top 3. So I think I get a pass for that. But anyhow, getting serious. But yeah, it's a terrific debut. I mean, one of the best debuts of the '60s, I would say.
I
I mean,
agree.
it's just really good. Just top to bottom, it's just there's really no song I didn't like on this album. Honestly, I think every song here is really good. Of course, the title track, "I'll Feel a Whole Lot Better," are 2 songs I mentioned before. Spanish Harlem Incident, I think they do a good version of here. Um, you won't have to cry is really great by I think that was a Gene Clark song. It was really good. Then you have Bells of Ribney, which again we've talked about that one before. Yeah, it's really great. I Knew I'd Want You. It's No Use. Chimes of Freedom, and yeah, it closes out with We'll Meet Again. Very solid song. There's some other songs I didn't mention, but again, I would just be naming the whole album. But yeah, overall, it's a very great song. Great album.
Byers list is keeping me from falling out of my chair.
Well, I'm honored for that.
Yeah. Yeah, probably from me putting turn so low on my list.
Yeah.
Like I said, sorry but not sorry. My number 3 spot, you guessed it. We both guessed it. What it was going to be, "Sweetheart of the Rodeo," and yeah, very amazing country album. Not the strongest country album I've ever heard, but for Bird standards, this album is amazing. I mean, the 2 best songs on the album right away, "You Ain't Going Nowhere" and "Hickory Wind." Those 2 songs alone, to me, makes the album worth listening. If those 2 songs aren't good enough for the album, listen. I don't know what is. I mean, not I don't know what it is, but just don't listen to the album. "I Am a Pilgrim." I love that song. Same with "The Christian Life." "Love You Don't Miss Your Water." "You're Still on My Mind." Amazing. "Pretty Boy Floyd." I love. 100 Years From Now, I like a lot. "Blue Canadian Rockies" is good. "Life in Prison," I really enjoy. And "Nothing Was Delivered" is one of their best closing tracks. I mean, that's not saying a whole lot, but, for compared to some of their really atrociously bad, this just really looks amazing. Haha, I'm giving Nick a hard time. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
We're all entitled to opinion, and I know you don't mean any harm with their comments. Some people, like when me and Garrett Bryer did our Steely Dan top 10, this one person was really coming at me like, "Oh, why wasn't there enough Pretzel Logic songs on on
Mm-hmm.
your top
Right.
10?" And I'm like, dude, not only did I have one song on that list, but I don't know.
I mean, we all have thoughts and words.
Yes. But yeah.
All right.
What's your number? I know our top two is gonna be very
Yeah.
similar.
So
Might
it's
be
kind
the
of
top game.
yeah, it's kind of funny. We have the same top two and the same bottom two.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So number two is going to be Notorious Bird Brothers. I mean, arguably their most cohesive album, just because you have a lot of songs that blend together, which was pretty, which was pretty good for that time. And I think it really worked. You have, of course, we already mentioned a few songs already. Of course, we have Artificial Intelligence to start us off. I love the horns on here. I love the brass instruments included on here. Then you have Going Back again. Both of us had in our top 10 list. It's just really great cover. Natural Harmony is really great. Absolutely really good song on here. Draft Morning, Wasn't Born to Follow, and of course we are both of us also had Get to You, which again, gorgeous song. Um, um, and then side two is also very good as well. I'd say the only song I'm not too crazy for is Space Odyssey. Um, Again, kind of another one of their kind of more jokey songs, but it's still not their worst closer. I think there's some moments I did like. But yeah, overall it's a very great album and a good one for the classic, I guess, quote unquote classic period to go out on. So very nice.
Yeah. Uh, before I get to my number two, someone in reactions to the classic criticized my Beatles list because I had too many George songs and not enough John songs. Well, that and I remember that you guys were nicer to him than needed.
Yeah.
I didn't respond because I would probably say something not nice. Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, I mean, if if we have disagreements, I'm never gonna come at you like, oh, how dare you ever say that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be like I my favorite Beatles, George Harrison. So I agree with you, Jason, for having George songs higher on your list than John's. But if I say for I didn't feel that way, I'd be like, I disagree with your list, but I respect your opinion on George Harrison. He's a really good Beatle. Just happens to not be my favorite. And if even if I didn't like George Harrison, I'd be like, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I totally respect your opinion on it. These are mine. But yeah, I always like to be respectful about it. I don't arguing with people online is just stupid. People just like to be angry all the time.
Yeah.
That one person on our Steely Dan video, unwarranted, unwarranted with that person how he was acting towards me. I could have went a different way. I could have been rude. I could have been nasty towards it, but I chose to laugh it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even
That's always the best way.
even the couple of things you said, I know you don't mean anything. You don't mean any harm. I know when you say things, it's mostly jokes. I know that it's we're all four of us are friends, so
Mm-hmm.
I know we like to joke. Like if we ever do like ranking the Beatles, I'll be like, or sub. I'm in the comment section. I would probably say something like a joking manner,
Mm-hmm.
nothing harmful, and yeah. But well, it's my list. I could do whatever I want. I want to tell the guy,
Exactly.
make your own list. Exactly. Like
Yeah, because I get comments. I mean, I've had a couple comments throughout my 70s series, just you know, especially on my last video on 76. I had one person comment saying, I can't remember, I think it was 75 actually, where someone says, my list sucks, and then replies to his own comment multiple times, giving his list. I'm like, you could have just made one giant comment. You didn't have to make these separate comments. I mean, it was good. I mean, more comments mean more engagement. So I wasn't complaining, but still, it's kind of like okay, so. But yeah, so in those moments, that's kind of when I like to joke. That's when I like to clap back. Just kind of respond in a way that they probably don't expect me to say.
one time, it was like an instrumental of a Beach Boys song, and I wanted to like post the lyrics so that people could like sort of like have like a karaoke of, and this one person's like, "Who asked?" Like, no one asked for this, and then I jokingly replied with the lyrics again. he was like, "You're not funny. You're dumb." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And
I
yeah,
gotta
then
find one. I gotta, yeah, because you're bringing up that one. Let me just find one that was recent of somebody trying to say something to me. Um, Jordan, nice. Hey,
hey
Jordan, nice to see
Jordan,
you.
I disagree with Brier's list, but I could tell him good list and give him my picks. Yes,
Exactly. That's all you need
like
to do. Just be
like
nice about it. If you're nice about it, then I won't have to clap back. But if, and of course, I know Jason, so I know, so with him, of course, with Jason, of course, I'm not gonna clap back, even if we do disagree. But if it's a stranger, then yes, I will clap back.
same with same with Jason's list with his favorite Beatles song. I'm not gonna be like your number one sucks. It's not my number one, and then leave it at that. I'm like yesterday. Wow, what an amazing song! It's in my top 10. My favorite happens to be "Within You, Without You" from the Sgt. Pepper album, and really nice top 10, Jason. I don't ever like to. I don't know. I never see why people have to be rude whenever they have a disagreement. Like you don't have to always agree with what people say.
Okay, so I found the comment I was talking about before, and this is what it looks like. Again, his first comment was your album picks suck, and then then again it's just separate replies instead of just one giant comment. It's
What the heck?
like why put that effort? And
That's
then
stupid.
then at the very end he says, "Do I need to keep going?" That's the last thing he said.
You say yes.
And then my reply was, "Sorry, I don't know what you're trying to say. Maybe next time be a teeny bit more polite and write this as one comment like a normal person." And then I gave like a kissy emoji and a peace sign.
You're, oh man,
And then he did reply, but it's just like one of those replies like, yeah, he has no argument. His reply was just simply, "How can I be more clear? Your list sucks." Like that's all you got. So I think I won that. I think I won
saying
that
a
fight.
list sucks though. It's like, oh, I can't stand when people say a list sucks.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can never. Yeah, what a jerk. That
Mm-hmm.
that's a nice way of putting it.
I
My
will
number
make a.
two.
I am. Sorry. One
You're
last
good.
thing. In my 77 video, which is coming out tomorrow, I do make a joke on this whole conversation. So look out for that.
My number two. I agree with you. Notorious Bird Brothers.
Right.
Amazing album. I mean, after all that rambling, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this album because you basically nailed the head,
Mm-hmm.
nail on the head there. But yeah, that's my number two spot.
Mm-hmm. Which of course means our number one. Of course, got to be Younger Than Yesterday. So even though we already established that Notorious Bird Brothers is technically a more cohesive album, I think the high points on this album just edge it out just slightly more. Um, for all the songs that were mentioned throughout this entire live stream, of course, "So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star," "Have You Seen Her Face?" So again, two great songs. And, CTA 102. Again, I know you like that song way more than I did, but it's not the worst song I've heard. Renaissance Fair is really good. Time Between, Everybody's Been Burned. Like what a dark song that song is about, the bombing of Hiroshima and stuff like that. Like definitely would not expect that. Words and thoughts and words. Again, really great song. Mind Gardens. I know you like that song a bit more than I do, but again, I don't hate it. I think it's pretty. I think I do like it more than the most. Then I already mentioned My Back Pages, just their best Byrds cover, and the last two songs, "The Girl with No Name" and "Why," are also very solid songs to go out on. So like I said, the highs on here is why it's number one. But yeah, it's one of the great albums.
I agree. Definitely one of the best albums I ever heard. I mean, again, yeah. The first track is really good. Have You Seen Her Face? One of the best pop song slash rock songs. CTA 102. I can see why you think it's a joke song, but I think it's really good. Very great space song. I'm a big fan of Odyssey, Space Odyssey as well. Those two songs really amazing. Renaissance Fair is really good. Time Between, really nice song by Chris Hillman. Everybody's Been Burned, great song. Thoughts and Words, Mind Gardens, My Back Pages, those 3 songs, one after another, it's just, oh man. And then Girl with No Name's really good, but very, very forgettable still. And Why? What a great way to end off the album. But yeah, just as a little overview, Bird Maniacs, Farther Along, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, Dr. Byrds, Pre-Flight, Byrds, 5D, Untitled, Ballad of Easy Rider, Turn, Mr. Tambourine Man, Notorious Brothers, and Younger Than Yesterday. That is Bryer's list. My list is Bird Maniacs, Farther Along, Turn. I know Jason's going to be mad at me for saying that. 5D, Dr. Byrds, Untitled, Pre-Flight, Ballad of Easy Rider, Mr. Tambourine Man, Byrds, Sweethearts of the Rodeo, Notorious Brothers, and Younger Than Yesterday. So
I think we both have really great lists.
And if anyone says their number one isn't our number one, you're wrong. You suck. And yeah, you are garbage as a person, really. That just goes down to it. Obviously, that's a joke after all the stuff we said, but yeah. I'm sure it's a good list, but I need to do a deep dive before I can give my opinion. Okay, that's fair. I mean, you could still say your number one's different than ours, but yeah, I respect that Mr. Tambourine Man's. I mean, if it's Bird Maniacs, even then I'm gonna be like, I really disagree with you, but I can see why.
Set the table, please.
But yeah, what's your final thoughts on the Byrds before we finish off? Because I need to finish this video off.
Yeah, I think I'll try to make it quick then. So yeah, I kind of talked about it in the overview, but yeah, overall, this was a very good experience just to kind of go over a band that I knew of, but never really thought about diving deep into them. But after going through this journey, I will say that my respect for them has definitely gone up a lot. Like there's so many great songs in this catalog, even on the albums that aren't that great to the general audience. I think there's still some good stuff within each album. But yeah, it's just a great, and then also their history is very fascinating, especially when doing all the research for each album. It definitely gives you a grander scope of what was going on at the time. And overall, this was very fun, and I'm glad to be a part of this. So looking forward for the next series that we do.
Yep, Mamas and the Papas, and yes, sir, that album, very excited. That's the first album we're gonna do by them. That's just our first. My final thoughts is basically almost like yours. They had a really good discography. There are 2 albums that I really strongly recommend not listen to, unless you're Jason, who's going to do a deep dive. But unless you're doing a deep dive like Jason does, stay far away from those last 2. Really love them. 2 of the 3 of my top 3s in my top 100. I mean, 3 of the albums are in my top 100 album list. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. Pleasure having this series. Stay tuned for our Mamas and Papas series. Thank you.